But we have to start the morning talking about the night. Last night, 12 Democratic presidential candidates filled the debate stage once again, and many people felt that Elizabeth Warren emerged as the new frontrunner. Sorry, Joe Biden. Now, the candidates came across as united around the topic of impeachment, divided around the topic of health care. We are going to break it all down with our panel this morning. Joining us remotely from D.C. is HuffPost senior reporter Arthur Delaney. Arthur, thanks for coming on. And here on the couches with us, we've got Bradley Tusk, founder and CEO of Tusk Ventures. Bradley, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right, guys, let's start with Elizabeth Warren. As I mentioned, appearing to become kind of the front runner. Of course, her big theme of the night was going after big tech. Let's take a look at a clip of Warren.
Look, you get to be the umpire in the baseball game, or you get to have a team, but you don't get to do both at the same time. We need to enforce our antitrust laws, break up these giant companies that are dominating big tech, big pharma, big oil, all of them.
Arthur, let's start with you. Of course, these candidates are always going for a pithy soundbite. I actually liked that comparison. I like Elizabeth Warren making a baseball comparison. How did you think it went over, and how did she do overall last night?
She did well. I mean, her front-runner status has sort of emerged from polling that shows her tied her in the lead with Joe Biden. And the way the debate went really reflected that, with everyone attacking her. But on this answer, antitrust, I think she had the energy, and nobody really attacked her very forcefully. Andrew Yang said, well, breaking up big companies isn't going to give our children healthier diets, which didn't make a lot of sense. So she's sort of out in front on that one. And I don't think that's an issue where the other candidates, except for maybe Amy Klobuchar, feel really strong.
Bradley.
Yeah, I mean, she owns this issue, right? And she's captured it really well and played. What's really smart about it is the people on the left who vote in Democratic primaries really like her position on Amazon and Google and Facebook, and yet it kind of makes sense to most other people too. So it resonates across the board. So I'm not sure she did well consistently across the board last night, but I think on this issue she continues to succeed.
Bradley, I'm wondering if you think, as you know, corporations and the wealthy, right? Because a lot of these politicians also talked about the wealth tax, for example. As they listen to these debates, should they start getting worried as Warren really kind of breaks away from the pack, that maybe life as they knew it is now ending?
The only thing that's inevitable is change, right? And if Trump is not reelected, at the moment, if you had to guess, you would say Elizabeth Warren is the most likely person to be the president next. And she will definitely try to change a lot of things. Now, will she be able to move any major legislation through Congress? History says no. Most presidents are unable to. But the power of the executive branch is very strong. And if you are any of these companies that can be investigated by DOJ for antitrust or anything like that, you're going to have a world of hurt in front of you.
You mentioned the billionaire angle, and I saw a very good tweet from my friend at HuffPost, Emma Gray, who said, oh, we have reached the point in the night where Elizabeth Warren has to clarify that she doesn't want all billionaires to die. Right. I thought that was a very funny tweet. We are talking about the idea that the polling has now reflected Warren as maybe the frontrunner instead of Biden. I want to mention that we are hearing reports that Mike Bloomberg is maybe considering running. We saw that he said that if Biden were to sort of fade away, maybe he'd still come in. And of course, you were a former advisor to Bloomberg or consultant.
I was just campaign manager.
Okay, campaign manager. So let's talk about that. I mean, at this point in the game, isn't he a little late?
Yeah, I mean, look, on one hand, because he has a ready infrastructure, based on a limited amount of money and so much credibility, if anyone could jump in at the last minute and be prepared, it's him. But with that said, I think that it's a fun story for reporters to talk about. But realistically speaking, absent Biden dropping out, Mike partly chose not to run because he didn't see a path with Biden there in the centrist lane. And, Biden didn't have a great night last night. Things are not going particularly well. No. But I don't see him dropping out entirely in the next couple of weeks.
Arthur, how did people in D.C. react to this report about maybe Bloomberg isn't necessarily fully decided not to run?
Well, it's a little surprising because, like he said, he previously evaluated this option and said, I don't see a path. And nobody in D.C. sees a path either. We had 12 people on that debate stage. We added a billionaire for that debate, Tom Steyer. He had almost no impact on the evening. And I think that makes it even harder to imagine how someone like Michael Bloomberg, well-known and well-funded as his campaign would be, it's hard to see how that would be effective or successful in this primary.
Arthur, what were your thoughts on Andrew Yang kind of having his moment? His freedom dividend actually got a lot more debate going than a lot of people were thinking.
Oh, well, I mean, he's always been able to get viral moments from this campaign that he can broadcast to his intense base of supporters, but I think he never gets a great chance or does a great job of explaining actually how this would work, especially considering that the proposal involves a lot of hand-waving at the existing massive social insurance and public benefits infrastructure that has been built up in this country through like 100 years of policymaking. So I think he'll sort of continue on this low simmer path that he's been on, but I can't imagine he'll break through to the top tier of candidates.
Arthur mentioned Tom Steyer not necessarily having much of an impact. Speaking of low impact, Klobuchar has struggled recently, Amy Klobuchar, and some people thought that maybe the last few debates really haven't gone so well for her. Clearly last night tried to come out and kind of hit harder and be more of a presence. Let's take a quick look at a clip of Klobuchar from last night's debate.
But I want to give a reality check here to Elizabeth, because no one on this stage wants to protect billionaires. Not even the billionaire wants to protect billionaires. We just have different approaches. Your idea is not the only idea.
So, Bradley, did she help her case anymore?
A little bit. I mean, on paper, as Biden seems to implode, and maybe, though Sanders seemed perfectly healthy last night, but maybe the heart attack at some point knocks him out of the race, and you say who could be the moderate alternative, Klobuchar, like Buttigieg, at least on paper qualifies as that. But in reality, she hasn't really broken through most of the debates. She was a little better last night, but I think we're grasping at straws here.
You know, I want to ask actually both of you, but Bradley, let's start with you, about impeachment and the inquiry and how that involved essentially Hunter Biden. I'm wondering how you thought Joe Biden handled that last night.
Poorly. Here's the fundamental problem, I think, with Biden and his campaign on this issue, which is they keep making the clear distinction saying Joe Biden did not break any laws. And let's just stipulate for sake of argument that that's true. I think what they don't get is when most people look at his son, who is in no way qualified, making millions of dollars just because of his last name, people find that corrupt across the board. Democrats, Republicans, independents, liberals, conservatives. And I think that until he can sort of understand that and come to terms with it and speak about it, he's always going to be trying to parsing these differences that really don't mean anything.
Now, of course, having to respond to it at all, Arthur, I'd love your take there. Joe having to say, look, my son didn't do anything wrong and I didn't do anything wrong, even being forced to respond up there. And of course, we saw that Hunter Biden did drop off that board, sort of legitimizes a lot of the attacks that have come from the Trump side against the Bidens.
The debate moderators put this question to Biden really well. They pointed out that just the other day, Vice President Biden, you put out an ethics and government plan, which obviously was designed to highlight the collapse of ethics in the Trump administration. But he talked about not having family members in cabinet positions, and it really served to sort of validate the idea that, you know, your family members riding your coattails is not a good thing. And so even though Joe Biden said, you know, my son did nothing wrong, I did nothing wrong, I thought that the way that the issue was presented by the moderators was definitely unfavorable, and there's really nothing he can do besides say, I didn't do anything wrong, and by the way, Trump is worse. It's sort of a muddle.
Absolutely. And since we are talking about the topic of impeachment, we want to mention that President Trump tweeted this morning in reaction to the debate. He said, you would think there is no way that any of the Democrat candidates that we witnessed last night could possibly become president of the United States. Now you see why they have no choice but to push a totally illegal, absurd impeachment of one of the most successful presidents. So an interesting tweet.
Hey investors, Zach Guzman here. Are you interested in learning more about the markets and getting the latest financial news? Well, then click right here to subscribe to our Yahoo Finance YouTube channel. Get the latest up-to-the-minute market analysis, big interviews in the world of finance, and information on how to manage your money every day wherever you are.